Hello, listeners, and welcome to a Geek Tragedy. I am Stephen, known online as Plague Man for various reasons, and I am your host. As ever, I will welcome to the pod the most erudite human and my best friend, Holly Properly. Hello, Holly, how are you?
Hello, I am very well, thank you.
Are you the same as you were when I asked this question about an hour
and a half ago? Actually, my spirits are largely leavened by the excellent 2 hours of chatting that we have done, and whatever this is that's floating in front of my face.
While you're doing that, I will say, and of course, our very own salvage man and crafter par excellence, Mark Cordery. Mark, how are you?
I am very well too. Once again, buoyed by our previous hour and a half or so chatting as we were doing this retrospectively, and the timescale has all been fucked up for this episode.
And that's why we haven't changed our clothes.
I'm not wearing any pants. And hidden behind the scenes, our producer and long-suffering Kit, who shall be named Kit and stay behind the scenes.
And Stephen, yourself.
Oh, yes,
how
me.
are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. I'm warm from chatting because, gentle listener, we are recording this introduction at the end of the pod. If you listened last week, this is the end of the thing.
Don't get into the time scale.
No, we've done temporal linguistics already today.
It's episode 18 of the pods, and last week, or just now for us, we discussed what made us geeks in the first place, and we started talking about the memories that we have of all the things that really inspired us. You know, sliding doors moments in our lives. If we hadn't had them,
I like that movie.
Now, and we've had analogies like Mark and I talking about, like the fact that if we could have both become marine biologists and met in a different life, that'd been glorious. And we didn't stop. We kept talking. We just realised that we'd have to cut it in half and say hello again. So at the end of that pod, we're saying hello now at the beginning of this pod, but the last pod is still that pod now, then that pod. Which is the same thing we had last time, but with Mark Savage. No.
Matt.
Yes.
Matt Savage.
Hey, look,
no, it wasn't.
I'm looking at Mark's glorious face. It's easy to say, Mark. What? We did have this conversation, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We had the temporal linguistics conversation, and all of us came away confused and feeling slightly battered and defeated.
I had an aneurysm. I'm better now.
It got better, yeah. So, without further ado, that's how you say it, right?
No.
Ado.
Adieu.
No, Holly's got to say it. If you want something done Holly properly,
then I have to do it myself or some shit like that.
I thought it was sort of Stephen. We do this every time.
I don't know. I can never remember. A week is slightly too long for me to hold that in my head.
Okay.
I might just write it on my mirror in big letters. So
okay.
I know. I'm confused.
Let's get back into it. We left it on Terry Pratchett.
Yes, I'm going to talk about Terry Pratchett now.
Let's watch everyone, like in mystery movie theatre things. You all right there, Holly?
Yeah,
right.
Good, thanks.
Okay, so we were going to talk about some Terry Pratchett bits and pieces. And Holly, we're going to kick us off with your thoughts on Truckers.
Yeah, the Bromeliad trilogy, which was the first Terry Pratchett I ever read, and it was my big library find. And I remember I'd read Borrowers a few years before I picked up Truckers.
Masculine. That was the guy, wasn't it? It was called Masculine.
Yeah. And I'd read Borrowers, and I picked up Truckers, and I just thought Truckers is just it's just incredible. Like I absolutely devoured it. So there are thousands and thousands of tiny gnomes, not gnomes, just gnomes, who all live in this department store. And what I just really loved was the fact that like they'd been there for such a long time, and they'd like there had been so many generations that the concept of outside had like a capital O, and it was, you know, like it was just a folk tale. Like outside didn't exist, like, and sun had a capital S and rain had a capital R, because they were just, you know, like they were things that had fallen into folk legend. And then the horror of all horrors, the store is like the whole world is going to be demolished and they've got to survive. It's fucking post-apocalyptic.
It is, isn't it? I was just thinking that.
Yes,
that's my first post-apocalyptic literature.
There we go.
Reverse segue.
We have ungreased the leopard
and re-greased the leopard.
At some point, I must remember to get the Molinaris keep sending me pictures of a T-shirt they're making with our.
I really want one.
Yeah. They've made us. They've got the little logo on the front, and on the back they've got like degreasing the leopard and all the other shit that we say as
knocking one out.
Like tour dates on the back.
Oh, fantastic! I want one of those.
I really want one of those. I don't think you could wear it in polite company, though.
Oh, I don't care. None of my company's that polite.
but yeah, no, I loved it. And then I read, so after Truckers I read Diggers, after Diggers I read Wings. And it was a huge fulfillment of like what I kind of really wanted Borrowers to be. And I loved it, and it brought me into the world of Terry Pratchett, and there is no greater world. The man was a complete genius of world building, of characterization.
So, obviously, I think we'll definitely dedicate a long, probably 8-part pod to Terry Pratchett, because you know, he's spanned across not just, you know, he's no longer just in literary. He's kind of done that thing that we talk about of moving from media. But for me, he influenced very much my teens. He appeared in my life when I was just sort of like around 11 or 12 years old, and I was very grateful for his appearance. The first book I read of his was Mort.
Love Mort.
Because when I went on holiday, my friend and I would go on holiday together. Would pick books off the shelf for each other. And W.H. Smith, he got me Mort, and I got him Good Omens. I think maybe.
Okay.
I think it was around that time, and yeah, he hung around my life after that forever. You know, he'd be hiding under the bed or in a bag somewhere, and I'd keep finding him.
He gave you a blackjack once.
He gave me a blackjack once. He did give me a blackjack once. But I think the book that really, I think Sam Vimes really did it for me. Like,
Sam Vimes is a fantastic character,
and I think the Night Watch was my favourite of the books that he was in. They were the big influences of Pratchett. What about you, Mark? When did he appear in your world?
Oh God, when it been probably, I guess, after college. So I guess I picked up on him probably about 86, something like that, maybe. So quite, I think.
You're not that old, are you?
1986.
Mid-30s.
Oh yeah,
and I have been for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, Terry Pratchett is very much a part of my working experience, because I have an Audible subscription and get an audio book each month, and I will generally alternate with a Terry Pratchett book. So I don't know how many I've got on my Audible account now, but probably 10, 15, and I'm working my way through them, not in sequence, but just randomly. Pyramids. I'd like to listen to Pyramids.
Is there any book he says?
Well, yeah, of course.
Like, the Thud. I think Thud was my last one that I listened to.
The very first book, when I very first got Audible, I got Audible because I was going on a spa day by myself, and I thought if I've got something to listen to, it'll just kind of pass the time while I'm lounging by a pool and things like that. And I got Audible, and the very first thing that happens with Audible is that you get a free book to download. And the very first book I think that I downloaded from Audible was Lords and Ladies. That was the very that was the very. But I have to say, like, ultimately, I know Sam Vimes is a fantastic character. He is one of the best characters that Terry Pratchett ever created. But there will never be a better character than Granny Weatherwax. She is my absolute hero. When I'm old and cranky, I want to be that old and cranky.
What book do those two characters meet in?
Oh.
Do you know the answer to this?
No, I don't.
He's saying that like he does.
They must have met, but I can't think of when they have.
Let's move on because we can talk about that when we do the actual Pratchett one. But it's a good question. But we're going to be here all day if we talk about if we do go down. We're circling the Pratchett rabbit hole. We're looking down it and thinking maybe we should go down the list. Let's not.
There's a
Circling
metaphor for you. Hole. Yeah, it's a fantastic metaphor. I love it.
Thank you. Mark, pick another topic. We've done what we've done. We've done TV shows, books, a little bit of comics, but not too much. What do you want? What should we do next?
Films. I have
films.
So many influential films in my life.
So let's just say we can all do. We talked about Princess Bride, didn't we? We talked about Princess Bride before the thing. Kit was going to come in on Princess Bride. I think we were talking about it before. Let's bring Kit into the conversation.
Let's do that. Kit.
Kit doesn't do any work, so we might as well do something, So we're going to bring Kit in, a little bit of a surprise. But before we do, Holly, what did you find out?
They never meet.
Oh, no!
Really? Have they never met?
They never encounter each other.
Gosh.
You can assume that they encounter each other like at wider events, but they never actually physically encounter each other in
weird,
Discworld.
That is,
but that right there is the mark of incredible world building. The fact that you can be so completely invested in characters that never meet each other.
Yeah, that's good. So everyone, this is Kit. Kit, say hello.
Hello, I'm Kit.
Hi, Kit.
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Stephen.
What?
Kit, do you feel comfortable coming out from behind the?
This is very scary.
The production desk.
This is very different.
Well, we won't keep you long. Obviously, we've been talking about like kind of you know this because you're listening to what we're saying, but we're talking about the things that have obviously influenced our lives to make us geeks. We're going to talk about films. We're going to talk about The Princess Bride. But before we talk about The Princess Bride, seeing as you just joined, and it's only fair to ask you this question: what's your earliest memory of being a geek, Kit? What was the first thing that came into your front, that comes into your front when you think, what made me do this? What took me down this road?
I got really into Goosebumps as a kid.
Oh
no. But specifically.
Have you put your elbow in a bowl of ice cream?
No, I just remembered my Goosebumps trauma.
I'm so sorry, Holly, for bringing up your trauma.
Look what you've done. Get back behind your curtain.
Yeah.
I will go.
You've been here for a minute and you've already traumatised Holly.
It's not hard
This is why we keep you in a box.
I'll go. I'm sorry.
No boxes were harmed in the making of this episode.
There was an episode of Goosebumps where the guy's brother kept pranking him by hiding under his bed and like grabbing his foot. And then it turned out that it wasn't his brother. It was some kind of big, horrible, gribbly beastie. And it was the only episode of Goosebumps I ever watched. And I was so traumatized by it, I never watched Goosebumps again. So, but Kit, please, tell us more.
It wasn't the TV series that got me. I actually found the TV series quite boring.
The books.
But the books, especially the Choose Your Own Adventure books, I read them to death. And I'm really sad to say that I did not know of fighting fantasy until a lot later on in life. And that was just...
definitely things we could have talked about fighting fantasy books.
Yeah.
I now know very much about fighting fantasy thanks to Stephen.
And the Shambling Man interviewed Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone for the Book Tower episode.
That's so cool.
Excuse me 1 minute. I have to just go and shut my door because my cat has come in.
Anyway, Goosebumps. So
Goosebumps and Choose Your Own Adventure books got me from just general, like, I read a lot of Beatrix Potter as a kid. That was like, Beatrix Potter was my jam. I had the audio tapes, but that kind of tipped me into like the geekdom areas where I found horror books and supernatural thrillers, stuff like that. Really got into that. And then I think hitting my like 12 to 15, I found James Herbert, and such a great writer.
Where did you find him? Was he just outside
He
your
was
house,
just
or?
hanging around down in Bournemouth one day, and I bumped into him and I went, "You're right."
Lovely.
That's lovely.
a long time ago, I put down my PlayStation controller because I was getting a bit terrified of little black jelly babies that were part of the ensemble of bad guys, or pretend bad guys in this case, of Silent Hill when you wander around the school. And I thought I want to watch some TV. And I turned it off and I flicked on the TV. And for the first time ever, I saw a guy in a black outfit with like a black mask on, and a giant brown thing, furry brown thing, it hit him in the face, and he rolled around in the middle of a swamp. And I went, I don't know. And I flicked it over, and I watched some other stuff. And I went, I wonder what that thing was I just watched. I went back to that, and it was The Princess Bride. And I clicked on in the middle of the bit with the rodents of unusual size just attacking
R.O.U.S.
yeah. Wesley, and I was like, oh, right, okay, it's some kind of fantasy adventure film that I've never heard of. And I started watching it, and I realised it was Princess Bride, which I'd read, which is incredible. That was my very first experience with Princess Bride as a film, was just trying to get away from Silent Hill, and instead discovering the second half of The Princess Bride, and then being desperate to watch the first half of The Princess Bride, because I didn't realise it was something I could watch.
Oh yeah, of course. Because if you come in like halfway through, you can't just.
Oh, in those days, no, I couldn't just flick it back. No,
you couldn't just.
I best I could have done was phone ITV or whatever and go like, "Hey guys, I just turned on my TV and you're halfway through running The Princess Bride. Could you right back to the start for me? I pay I watched the adverts, so you know."
No ITV +1 for you.
No. Anyone else? What was your first Princess Bride experience? Because
I didn't watch The Princess Bride until I was like 19, 20, I think. I'd seen sort of like the things that are like in the same, like feel to me like they're in the same genre, like Neverending Story and
Stardust.
But
correct.
I hadn't watched The Princess Bride until I was about 19 or 20, and I think it was just one of those things where I think it was like the morning after a house party, and we were all like desperately hungover, and just kind of like lounging around on sofas waiting for like the soberest person to cook breakfast. And someone was like, let's watch The Princess Bride. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just remember, like, I don't remember anything else happening to me during the period of time that it was on, other than me just sat, like, completely, like, transfixed to the TV, thinking, like, this is every story I ever made up when I was a kid. Like, it's just got that vibe, you know?
It's another film with too many confusing, sexy people.
Yes! Just like The
True.
Mummy.
Just like The Mummy, yeah.
See, for me, the Princess Bride, I think I'd been aware of it, but I hadn't been inclined to watch it because my fantasy films had been like Conan and
Krull.
Hawk the Slayer and the Krull, yeah, real, action films. And from what I'd heard of the Princess Bride, it was a little
a
bit
kissy story.
Yeah, it was exactly like the kid that he's reading
You are
to.
that kid.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to kiss now.
Is this a kissing story?
I had put off watching it for probably for years. People go, oh, you got to watch it. It's great. It's Princess Bride now. And obviously, once I watched it, I went, this is fucking glorious. Just beautiful, funny, wonderfully cast as well. And yeah, it's a glorious film.
Physic.
I don't think I actually I actually remember when I watched it because we had a wicked awesome media teacher who put it on for us as part of our film study session in year 10 at school.
Okay.
And it was so cool. It was like we all started watching it. Obviously, you only got to watch it in bits, and it frustrated me so much I had to go out and like I think it was back when I can't remember what the it wasn't Blockbuster. It's a different. You could buy DVDs, rent DVDs or whatever.
Oh.
And I remember renting it and going back and watching it and just being like, this is just amazing. It covers so many different areas of genre in one story. It's so good.
It's interesting. Those three. So the kind of the three that I kind of all like packed together as being part of that sort of like genreless not tied to any kind of particular genre films. So Stardust, Neverending Story, Princess Bride, in all
Lazy
of
Hawk.
and
That's
whatever
another
Mark
one.
said. For me, like Princess Bride, I like Stardust. I think the film is better than the book. Neverending Story, I think they're on a par with each other. And Princess Bride, I think the film is better than the book.
What did you think of the book then?
What, for Princess Bride?
Yeah.
Well, I loved it, but there weren't all the really sexy people in it.
If you've seen it, you can
that
imagine.
was a matter of your mental imagery going.
Exactly.
For me, I took the book to the. So for those who live in Southampton, I was working in the Hobbit or around the Hobbit at the time. I can't remember if it was there or not, but I took the Princess Bride with me to the Hobbit to read after work. I can't remember if I come from another pub. I was reading it at the bar, and it attracted quite a lot of attention. It was a glorious evening, and for me, the book is full of very sexy people. I like it very much.
Yeah, because it attracts. Yes, okay, we understand.
So,
Sixpence, if you're going to come in here, you have to stay in here.
Sixpence
Sorry.
is a cat.
I do have to ask you, were you reading the book to the bar at that point?
Oh.
I read it to several people at the bar that came over to see what I was reading and went, "Oh, it's the Princess Bride." There you go.
That just links into one of my favourite memories of Stephen when we were very tired post LARP.
Was
Stephen
it the Gruffalo?
Sat us all down and read us the Gruffalo, and then we all fucked off to bed.
For reference, we went to I ran a banquet, and this is irrelevant, but it's a story. I ran a banquet for LARPing, and I agreed to have many of the people that went to the banquet stay at my house.
I was not one of them
because they live far away. So I said sure. And I spent several days sorting the banquet out, ran the banquet, and came home at like 1 a.m, knackered, and everyone else was full of beans because they'd been playing the banquet and really enjoyed it. Not you. And they wouldn't go to sleep. So I bade them all lay down in their beds and sat on the sofa and read them the Gruffalo with the voices. And lo, they all fell asleep. And I went to bed and slept successfully. There you go. That is the story.
It was wonderful.
But yeah, The Princess Bride was like a really really powerful film of its age, because I mean, like you say, it was it's surrounded by films that are very pointed towards their genre, right? So I mean, around that time you got the Goonies and stuff like that come out, and like Mark says, there was Krull and Conan and all these other kind of like ridiculously over the top 80s movies that were trying to be like the action movies of
Butch,
like
Sword and Sorcery.
Yeah. And The Princess Bride kind of just made its own little space and elbowed its way to the front and spoke, I think, particularly to me, of the stories I wanted to tell and the person I wanted to be. It didn't have to be all butch and kind of like whatever.
That's it, isn't
and
it?
I could like whoever I wanted to like, and it was all kind of like, that's fine. And everyone was sexy and it was great. And I could be a dread pirate.
But it's the humour as well. It's the humour within the story.
And it was one of my first ever introductions to Wallace Shawn, and he is one of my absolute favourite people in the entire world. So, yeah, I just,
for sure.
And because he is a person that every time I see him in basically anything, he just makes me smile. There is just something so unbelievably wholesome about that man, even when he's playing, someone that's not particularly wholesome.
Yeah.
But he just makes me smile, and I think that's one of the very endearing things about The Princess Bride is that it is full of people and moments that just make you smile.
No more rhyming now. I mean it. Anybody want a peanut?
You see it and it's just and I think the only film that I kind of like was one of my big geek geek films that I sort of watched a lot earlier than that would probably be like The Mummy, and the only reason that I can put the two of them together is because again there was a lot of like it's just full of sexy people.
The Mummy was definitely an awakening.
I just needed to say that out loud, so there you go.
Yeah, see, well, my first viewing of The Mummy had Boris Karloff in it, so
Peter Cushing.
Somewhat different. No, pre that.
I watched the Peter Cushing one the other day because it gives one of my early memories is that being repeated, obviously for me when I was a kid and going like, this is really cool. But yes, The Mummy for me, a big film for me when I was a kid. And we mentioned this earlier, and you guys didn't know what the fuck it was, but it would be Flight of Dragons, which was an animated film. The premise of which is quite awful because it's about a guy that gets taken from the world of science into the world of fantasy, and at the end he has to destroy the world of science. And it's a bit kind of but the story in between that is beautiful.
Connected with the book of the same name.
Yeah.
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 Oh, okay.
And Mark does know what you're talking about.
No, well, I know the book. I had the book. I don't have it anymore, but I used to have the book.
But yeah, I
can't remember who the illustrator was. Though.
That was a wonderful part of my youth and storytelling. What do you want?
He's
talking to the cat.
He is talking to the cat. Yeah. You've just done that thing where you've spoken about something that you really like, that and it's reminded me of something that a very pivotal film from my younger years, which is just really depressing. And it's Bridge to Terabithia, and it's one of the.
Why would you bring that up?
Because you made me think of it.
It's like we're not going to talk about Grave of the Fireflies, but
I'm not allowed to watch Grave of the Fireflies, though. I've been forbidden from watching Grave of the Fireflies.
Is this like Ring Bright Water and Born Free?
Yeah.
Watership Down. Terrible things.
And Watership Down.
Oh Christ!
Animals, lovely animals die horribly.
I can't believe they made us watch that at school when I was like 8.
It was terrifying. The way that they illustrated and animated the old rabbit, like the one that's been like really fucked up by like terrifying. Didn't sleep for a week.
And they just put it on every year at Christmas. They just put it on.
So, this is not a Christmas film. Let me watch Die Hard instead.
So I grew up Disney-fied as a child. Like I know Holly. Like we have a very similar, Disney,
very
Disney
similar
love.
Disney profile.
But my one that was for me is growing up as
not looking fresh.
I grew up with Disney too, just a very different era of Disney.
I grew up with all Disney because my mum and my gran had all of the Disneys, like from Snow White till whatever was present day, on tape, then DVD, whatever. The one that actually broke me, I think, as a child was Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh no!
Because it's sad, but it's beautiful, and the music in it is just gorgeous.
It's incredible, and it's another one of those. Like I think that was for people that are our age.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of those really big. Sort of again, it's got like a kind of a moral. It's like a moral awakening film because it was one of the first films that Disney had created in the last in that time period, in that age of Disney, where the bad guy was just a guy. There was nothing magical about the Hunchback of Notre Dame. There was nothing supernatural about it. He wasn't like there were no genies. There was no nothing. It was just someone who was Frollo was just a fanatic, and he was a fanatic, so he persecuted people, and there was like that brought to the attention of a lot of people who were like pre-teen at that point, and kind of went, people can be awful, but other people can overcome it and other people can make things better. And that was, I think, a really kind of like
I was laughing at Mark's. What was your Disney film when you were growing up?
No, I was just thinking again that my first experience of the Hunchback of Notre Dame had Lon Chaney Jr. in it. So again, very different eras for us.
So I was going to point out that as well because that was a really powerful film. I thought because that is one where he's just chained up in the town square, isn't it? He ends up.
And having
the
stuff
Aurora
thrown at
model
him.
kit as well.
Yeah.
They do that in the Disney one too. Yeah.
My favourite Disney film is The Black Hole. No one never seen it. Oh, you've seen it, Mark. You've seen it.
I've seen it. Yeah. The robots. Well, the cute robots were a bit rubbish, but the is it
Maximilian?
Maximilian. That's right. Yeah, that's a great design.
He terrified. He was because of the fact that he like literally straight up murders people by like getting giant spinny scythes and then putting them through the middle of their chest and taking them out again. You're like, I went
Very
to
Disney.
Is
I was
it
gonna say, this
what
was
was the Disney film?
they're trapped on a big ship orbiting a black hole with a guy that has turned his entire crew into cyborgs because they wouldn't like obey him. He's like captured them, like brainwashed them, turned them into cyborgs. One of them, who we think is a character that has arrived, her dad has been turned into this giant murderous robot that keeps killing everyone with its giant scythe hands and its big glowing red slot eye thing. It's
Is it
terrifying.
live action?
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, that actually sounds terrifying.
I've just seen pictures from it. Oh god, no!
I'm not even gonna look.
Oh god, no!
I'm just gonna put it out there again, just in case anybody doesn't know. My favorite Disney film is 1997's Disney's Hercules, and there is also a sideways scrolling game that goes along with it that I have failed to complete since it came out. There you go. I've said it.
Let's go to my list of things to say at the end when we leave the thing. If you didn't get mentioned.
There is.
It's always up here.
So, like, I guess film-wise, we started off with Princess Bride because we all share that, and it's we dragged Kit in, and obviously I think films is something that we can talk about for ages, and we've already kind of said to ourselves we're going to talk about series of films like Aliens and Indiana Jones and stuff, no doubt in a little sequence of podcasts that we do at some point. But if we had to talk about powerful films briefly that like kind of moved you, and I want to hear what Mark has to say because like your era of films when you were growing up were so different. I think from I've watched a load of them because they are kind of. I got to watch them when I was a kid. Like one of my greatest joys when I was small was laying in bed. I had a tiny little TV, like a black and white TV that my nan used to have that was in my room, and I would watch all of those kind of films in my bed, and they were on, during the daytime, and I would be absolutely overwhelmed by them. And then later on, I'd see Star Wars and whatever, and it was so different. But I was too young to really understand them, but I used to love watching them.
Well, for me, like my introduction to films was mainly the Friday night double creature feature, which used to run on ITV, and I don't know how old I was. I was young enough to have been sent off to bed a few hours before they kicked off, but I would always creep down the stairs, sit halfway down the stairs, look through the banisters, through the half-open living room door, and be able to see the black and white TV in the corner of the living room. And I would get caught every single time by my mum.
Once you've done it once, they're like, go and check he's not on the stairs.
No, absolutely. To the point where it happened so often that eventually my mum went, all right, you can choose one of them. Yeah, you can watch one of them. You can't watch them both. You can watch one of them. You can choose which one, and I will come and wake you up to come and watch that film. So I got introduced to all the classic Universal horror films like the Frankenstein, Creature from Black Lagoon, which is still one of my favourites. I love the Creature from, just as a creature concept, as a creature design. It's beautiful. Dracula, the Bela Lugosi Dracula, and then all the Hammer horror films as well, which sometimes would turn out to be like twins of evil. My mum would go, "Ooh, we shouldn't really be watching this one." And I go, "This is great. What are they doing at the moment? Oh, look, boobies."
Boobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I. That was kind of my introduction, but I also that they weren't all the Universal horror films and the Hammer horror films. You would get a lot of the 1950s and 60s sci-fi, like Them! Exclamation mark, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I love that film.
Or It, Terror from Beyond Space, or what am I thinking? Forbidden Planet. Things like that were I just devoured them. It was all classic horror films, classic sci-fi, and that was really what formed me. That those things fascinated me, they excited me, they stimulated my imagination. I loved monsters, and I always wanted to make monsters. I mean, as soon as I saw the creature from the Black Lagoon, I went, somebody made that. It's great. I want to make those. So these were very formative experiences for me. And, thanks for having. I'm sure actually my mum left that door open, partially open on purpose. So that sitting on the stairs Friday night at about 10 o'clock, watching a film through the gap in the living room door, just changed me into what I am and have been ever since.
Love it.
So there you go.
It was beautiful.
That's me in films.
It was beautiful to watch Holly's wholesome meter go up and up and up as you were talking. I could literally mark the points where it hit peak wholesome.
It's the benchmark of an episode if we get Holly to cry.
That's just lovely. That's just really lovely. And I
Yeah,
just
but you're
those
all
are the
describing
moments
it,
that are
which
just,
is good.
Yeah.
You described it in books. Mark's describing it in films. I'm describing it by rowing out into the lakes in the middle of,
I am while I was listening to Mark, I made a list of my own like films that have like really good, and they are they're it's just like, it is a list of possibly some of the worst films ever made and some of the best films ever made. Like, I am not by any means like a cinephile. I've come to realize over the years that I like what I like what I like, and generally the things that I like tend to be like the crappiest film in the franchise. So with Alien, for example, Resurrection, love Resurrection. Everybody else hates it. I mean, Indiana Jones, I don't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so I think I kind of redeemed some points there.
Dial of Destiny?
Haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Still kind of, holding out on that. But with Indiana Jones, my favourite is Temple of Doom, and that is a lot of other people's not favourites. So, but this list honestly is just, it's utterly bizarre, because I was taking things that Mark was saying of, like those moments of, I remember sort of quite similarly, there was a New Year's Eve where I was little and I'd been sent to bed, and I remember coming downstairs for a glass of water, to see what the grown-ups were doing, and everyone was watching Rocky Horror, and I was like,
such a good film.
What is this? What is going on here? Who is that man? Why is he wearing tights? And it's one of my absolute, and like the year after, I was allowed to stay up and watch it, and then I was also like, oh look, boobs, and I didn't really understand a lot of the things that were going on in it, or why they turned out to be aliens at the end, and just the general surreal nature of everything that was going on. But I knew that I loved it. And that has kind of like that's kind of been like a really big part of my my growing up cinema experience.
Also, another formative moment, Barbarella.
I was going to say, I was here I watched that. My dad watched that when I was like 6 or 7. I was like, I feel strange.
But
it's actually watching Battle of the Planets from Japan.
There's a lot to be said against it, but as a slice of 60s weird movie making, it's glorious. The costuming, the sets, the decision, Pygar the angel, the Matmus, all of. It's a glorious film, retro 60s, not particularly PC, but just still wonderful. And for some, I don't know how old I'd have been when I was watching it, but far too young to be seeing boobies.
Yeah, it's good, because what you're describing is it's the power of the makers, isn't it? You know, people make films because they want other people to be inspired by what they're making, so that you will be in turn inspired to make yourself, right? So you're being inspired to write and create. We're inspired to sit down and talk about this stuff because we watched it in the first place, right? And
Well, yeah, but I mean, I've been trying to get you to talk about Cube 2, Hypercube, and Cube 0 with me for ages, and you won't do it.
That. I'll talk with you about that. I think they're great films.
we'll do a pod on them at some point. I promise. I might be dead by then, but nonetheless.
It's going to be episode 350.
I'll be dead, and you guys can sit around my body and do it over that.
Just Stephen in the corner.
Right, I'm getting over your dead body is the message I'm getting here.
Holly, we can do it when Stephen's on holiday, okay?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
We'll
I
do
take
a
those.
secret episode, just the two
When
of
was
us.
the last time you think I took a holiday, Mark?
I don't know, but you got to do it eventually.
The last holiday
We're
you
just
took.
waiting for you to go.
You again, my dead body.
Last holiday
yeah.
Stephen took was to do stuff for the pod.
That's true.
Actually, that's a very good point.
So yeah, I do empathise though. It's when I did it in a slightly different way. When I was a child, I pointed out before on different pods. We didn't have a lot of money in my family, and my dad won a VCR from work. Right in the late 70s, he was a milkman, and he won in a raffle a VCR, and it had like a long wired remote control, which was wonderful. And it actually plugged into my TV, which I was surprised by. But my mum and dad were not technically minded. Even at the early age of being like 4 or 5, I understood what the fuck was going on, and how to make this thing work, and how to press the buttons to make the thing record stuff at a certain time. So it had its timer. And my parents would not let me watch anything. My mum was very protective of me watching anything, kind of, as you would say, with boobies, let alone with like people's heads being hacked off or whatever. But I worked out that I could read the newspaper, work out what was on when, and then record it. And then, so my parents and I recorded it. And in the holidays, much like we did with going to the library and picking up books, I would record stuff when they were asleep, and then they would go to work. And while they were at work, I would watch terrifying movies when I was 6 or 7 years old.
Excellent. Luckily, it hasn't damaged you at all.
But I would watch them on my own and just sit there in like an empty house watching terrifying movies.
No!
What sort? Like The Burning, Evil Dead, Texas Chainsaw?
Like The Omen and Wicker Man. I watched a lot of the one that really terrified me first of all was it was a Frankenstein movie, and it was, I can't remember what it was called, which one it was, but it's set in a prison, and the doctor in the prison was like, there was a pianist or a violinist, I think, actually, who had really good hands, and there was a forger who had really good eyes, and he was killing them off and cutting up this guy for Frankenstein. And I didn't realise why. I'd never seen a Frankenstein movie before, and it led me to read Frankenstein afterwards. I wondered why they were going missing, and then the Frankenstein thing turns up, and you're like, and that was quite scary. Not
was
as
that
terrifying.
a Peter Cushing?
I only ever watched that one time, and I never watched it again. I probably really should go back to it and find out which one it was. I wouldn't have known who Peter Cushing was at the time. And yeah, I watched loads. I watched Terminator when I was, because I think I said this before, one of my friends' family members had a double video, so you could record videos off, so they hire them and then record them and then like lend them out for money. And when my parents were out, I watched the Terminator.
That's very enterprising.
That bit where he cuts his eye out in the mirror, that was quite terrifying for like a 7-year-old me or whatever. That was quite horrible.
It's quite terrifying for a 34-year-old me.
But because I was left on my own a lot as an only child, and my parents just worked like all of the time, I would sit and write stories about what I was watching. So a lot of my youth was spent writing new adventures for terrible mad doctors who cut people to ribbons and stuff, which led me to becoming quite a sturdy Cthulhu ref, I think, in storyteller. But yeah, it's fun, isn't it? These formative moments, watching things for things. Video. My mum would never let me watch them. It would have been awful. I would have been. I would have been all right. My dad would have got shouted at tremendously if my mum had found me watching. How's he down here watching these horror movies? This is your fault. And my dad
for winning that VCR.
Yeah, pretty much. Out of learning. But I mean, it also led to me watching things like Star Wars a lot on my own, and all those guys. I spent so much time immersed in as Holly said, with the books in different places and different worlds, and then writing about what I was watching afterwards. The amount of Star Wars fanfic I wrote when I was like between the ages of 5 and 12, and then realized when I started role playing properly that what I'd written were role playing adventures, and then running them, but having written them up a bit better than when I was 5, to be stories that I then ran for other people when I was older, was incredible. Sitting around the table with people, in my 20s, telling stories that I'd written when I was like 6 or 7, but slightly augmented. And while I was telling them, just remembering the experience of sitting on my old rubbish carpet, in this glow of this rubbish TV, pushing hula hoops into cheese and eating it. As I watched, that's what I did. I used to push hula hoops into cheese, best snack in the world, all on my own. And suddenly having people with me while I was telling these stories was just glorious. It was really glorious. Kit.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, I keep forgetting there's like a format and things. I don't have to just sit here and watch you guys. Really, like, pinnacle films for me didn't really come to me until I was like 12, 13, because my mum was also very kind of like, you watch Disney films when you were a child. We got very much after 8 o'clock we were not allowed to go like near the TV.
Sorry, I heard that as Disney films. I was like, it took me a second to work out that was Disney, and I thought, what the fuck are Disney films that you were watching when you were a kid? It's messed up. I was wrong. That's
Dodgier than your boobs and decapitated heads films.
There you go. It's one for the millenarians teacher, though, isn't it? Disney films.
I don't think that one. I don't know. No,
I think that one. I think it will go on the shirt.
Oh no!
But
off. No, I'm not going there. No, don't do that.
No,
you just did.
Kit, you were talking about your favourite Disney films.
Banana faux fit.
Okay.
Oh gosh, that's been a while. But I have to give props. My uncle, bless him, was prolific with finding DVDs and stuff that were not necessarily like legally brought and downloading whatever. Brought over a massive box of stuff he was getting rid of, and me and my infinite wisdom picked up that box and took it straight upstairs and did not let my mum see it. And it was full of Grindhouse and 90s cult films, which probably weren't cult films at the time, but so like I started off watching things like Blade, The Crow, the Society, which was an eye-opening film to watch at 13 years old.
Society.
It's a messed up film, but
it really is the shunt.
Yeah, but
the Society is a very fucked up film.
It introduced me to Mad George, and just his stuff is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See, you said Society, and my brain instantly went to High Society, the lovely musical with Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and Grace Kelly,
and nothing like that.
and that's
there's no singing in this one.
That's where I want my film experiences to be. I want them to be on the High Society, lovely 1950s.
Yeah, no, this one's much squelchier. There's squelching going on.
I think
not in the Disney film kind of way.
I think I'm all right.
Pretty much.
One of my favourite films, which I was just, I don't know why I was obsessed with this particular film. It was Blood Feast, and it is a terrible, terrible film from the 80s. So terrible, the blood in it is pink, and it's got the world's slowest car chase with a guy being chased around a car park with 2 people in a cop car, and this guy is doing like a fast, brisk walk. And it's such a terrible film, but I loved it so much. But then that'd be on
truly awful.
It was so good though. It was so bad. It was good.
It reminded me of the film, the car chase.
Oh, Stitches! That's a fantastic film. I love Stitches.
But as I grew older, like that led me more and more backwards in my time-wise backwards in my love of films. So I started watching Hammer House stuff and really got into anything with Vincent Bryson. Like he still is one of my favorite actors of all time. And then I discovered the film Freaks, like this.
Oh, Todd Browning.
Yeah, that still today is my standout film because for its time, it really sets a tone of acceptance and what happens if you don't. And it's very messed up for a 1920s film.
Mm.
Yep.
I don't understand. I don't get it.
It's
It's a
have you
freak
seen-
show.
It's a freak show, and
No, I mean, I just don't get I don't get the scary thing. I just don't get it.
I loved it's an adrenaline rush. It's like a roller coaster ride.
just sitting. I like it.
Does.
I've
For
got
me, it just fills my head full of ideas.
yeah. I've got this
In a good way.
memory.
Did you see like you know like Kit's going through his like history of like these like you're writing down like you're saying things like like 90s cult classics and talking about all these horror films. When you said that, I wrote down Cruel Intentions.
Oh no, that is
which is
also
a
very
really good film, but it's not really when you said
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
yeah.
In your 1920s excursions, kid, did you watch The Hands of Orlac?
Yep.
If I did, I can't remember
That's one that like gave me chills. The Hands of Orlac when I first watched it. That was very good.
I think one of the other ones from that era was like The Cat People. That was an amazing horror film. Really,
And The
like,
Gorilla.
Not see,
Phantom of the
I've
Rue
watched so
Morgue.
much of these.
Oh, Phantom of the Rue Morgue, very good. Fall of the House of Usher.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. That was good.
I like the book.
Was that a
Fiend
20s, was
Without
it?
a Face.
Was that a 20s?
No. There was, I think that was 50s, probably 50s Tingler and Fiend Without a Face.
Because I've got a real big thing for the 20s horror films. Particularly the silent movie ones are very good.
Nosferatu.
Whenever I hear ghost faces, I think of the Ghost Breaker.
Ghost facers.
That's the guys.
Yeah, no, I'm yeah. No, this is all far too scary for me.
Okay, well, let's talk not scary. So we've got a little bit of time left. We've done a lot of films and TV series. Although saying that whole cheese, no one else ever push hula hoops into cheese when they watched you?
I used to put hula hoops onto pepperamis.
It's not the same. Mark, if you
Cream
used to eat
cheese, yes.
cheese and stuff, if you want a decent snack, just push hula hoops into cheese and eat it. It's delicious. I used to watch the A-Team doing that, and things like Manimal.
Manimal.
And,
That rings a bell.
Oh, what was it? Yeah, Manimal and
Automan.
Automan. That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah.
They're the two. They were on at the same time, weren't they? And they were just like they only did one season of them. They were terrible 80s films. Automan was like a guy with a head, and the rest of him was like a computer-generated body, and he had a cursor.
It was trying to be Tron. It was trying to be Tron.
A cursor, which was prevalent at the time, that flashed on screens that went around with him, and it would draw cars for him and he'd get in them. And the whole shtick was when he went around corners, the person he was with, because he went around corners like, it would get flattened against the windscreen, and he fought crime. And Manimal was the man that held his hand up like this and moved his thumb like this. And then when he'd done that, he turned into a jaguar. And then basically just sling a jaguar on the screen and he'd be there.
There was a TV show when I was a kid. And it was a series of books as well, and it was called Animorphs.
Yes,
and they could do that, and it was great because they were just regular school kids, and they had to hide the fact that they could morph into like big jungle cats.
And
Manimal was better because he smoked.
The terrible animation of them.
$6 Million Man was better.
Oh, $6 Million Man, yes.
And Bionic Woman.
Buck Rogers. I like Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers was good.
Yeah, another good theme music there.
Yeah,
I like Minder. That was a good series.
Battlestar Galactica.
I loved Minder.
Yeah, just a bit of an old one to bring up with like Buck Rogers stuff.
Z-Cars.
Oh my God, Z-Cars.
Now we're just listing things.
We are. I was going to say now.
We're trying to be as obscure and old and very British as possible.
But I'm getting that. I really liked, and I think Kit probably will have heard of it. There was a TV show when I was a kid that was on BBC, and it was called Aquila, and it was great. It was about these two kids that found a Roman spaceship in their garden, and they dug it up, and they didn't speak Latin. It was basically, I think, the BBC's way of trying to teach children rudimentary Latin. Because they had to like learn all of the dials and the buttons to push so that they could like make it fly, and then they kept having like Aquila, the ship was the Aquila was the name of the ship, and it could do like really bizarre things, and basically every episode was the ship doing something unexpected and their boys failing miserably to fix it.
I didn't see that.
It was so good.
I can ask in the way of TV shows a question. So, which all of us should be able to kind of weigh in on, which is like one of the things that really, really, really altered how I kind of went through my life. Where it was for me was like very much the 90s and my teens. And I know we speak about these shows a lot between us. So like there were 3 I've written down here, big shows that were huge. 2 of them were comedies, and one of them was not. The not one was Neverwhere, which was like one of my defining TV shows, and then reading the book later was incredible. And the other 2 were Red Dwarf and Blackadder, which were really powerful bits of like kind of influence on my life. I don't really want to talk about Neverwhere today because I think like Neil Gaiman's a bit of a touchy subject right now. So, but incredible work though. I mean, it was brilliant. But Red Dwarf, I think, as where I wanted to kick off on that one, was
glorious.
It was an absolute, because I'd read, I'd obviously done the Hitchhiker stuff and, you know, done the Space is Funny kind of reading. I didn't think I'd find anything quite like it again. And Grant and Naylor made Red Dwarf, and I thought, this is brilliant. Even though as a TV show, it just had like joysticks that I could buy in Argos, stuck on a table, flying a ship around. It was fucking funny.
It was basically Blake 7 budget, but done as a comedy.
Yeah, so good. And I thought afterwards, when I wrote down Red Dwarf in this list, from our conversation about the PA stuff, and it obviously being about effectively beginning with just Lister, it's very Last Man, isn't it?
It is, but it's also, I suppose, it's got that kind of that whole sort of like wholesome, semi-wholesome, like fellowship kind of. It's all about the people you meet along the way, kind of, you know, vibe to it.
It's all lads as well. I mean, originally Holly was a female computer, which then got recast, but it is very much lads in space, which it is. No, it is. It's lads in space, which when America. Well, when America went to like, hey, this is great, we're going to do our own version of this.
I'm so glad you did the accent just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you were right there, weren't you? Sort of Midwest. But they cast.
Boy, howdy.
With a side order VR, they cast Kat as female, which utterly destroyed the dynamics which you had in the original version, because it was just lads in space, just being lads. I mean, Lister is the ultimate slob lad.
Yep.
Kebabs and curries and beers and not washing his socks.
And Cat being the vacuous emptiness of just fashion and being a cat.
But then, if you're going to talk about Red Dwarf, then you've kind of got to talk about the young ones and Bottom as well.
That didn't fit into my 90s kind of moment, because Blackadder was my other one. But yeah, go on.
Well, I was just saying they kind of sit in that same sort of era, the same sort of absurd comedy, low budget comedy. But I mean, you know, the young ones was again a bunch of lads. And that there was something about that dynamic that was, I don't know whether you could recreate that now, because I think the pressure from studios would be too much of like, we can't do an exclusively male cast. We're going to have to mix things up a bit. I don't know whether that could be made.
I don't think you get away with half the stuff that was put on young ones.
Wasn't Blackadder more or less the same though? I mean, like they went to see Queenie occasionally. It was just.
Yeah, that was all the way through very much the same. Like the recurring Bob Kate trope actually plays into that really hugely. You can have a girl in the petrol pump. You can, and the way that Rowan Atkinson creates plosive continents is just
beautiful,
stunning. But like that, having that dynamic. You can have a girl in the cast, but they have to be pretending to be a boy. Like
Yes.
it harks
Be
back.
one of the lads.
Well, if you like, again, this is going to be a terrible academic criticism, but think about like some of the most well-known plays in existence, things like Twelfth Night, basically anything written by Shakespeare that has any kind of mistaken identity in it. The women in that, the women in those plays, again, like would have historically have been played by men, right?
Mhm.
So Shakespeare plays, and Shakespeare was, for the masses. He wasn't like some kind of like highbrow Edgar Allan Poe type. So
Sure, Edgar Allan Poe would be pleased to hear himself
he's
described as.
spinning in his grave completely. But like that was a lot of the humor and things in a lot of the Shakespeare plays was, like lads in Venice, lads in this way, and that pervades, I think, through the majority of what we can define as quintessentially British humor.
I was going to suggest the Canterbury Tales, for example,
Canterbury
are a really
Tales.
good example of just like people blokes dicking around doing stupid shit.
Yeah, Shakespeare's Carry on. Shakespeare's full of dick and fart jokes, and then you get this surge in the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Right now we're going
surge. You get this surge in the late 90s and early 2000s of incredible female British comedians. You Julie Walters, Victoria Wood, Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders. You get all of them arrive at one point in time, and I genuinely don't believe that there will ever be anything funnier than there is a short kind of series that Victoria Wood and Julie Walters did called Mensana and Thingamy Doodah. And Victoria Wood is one of my seminal growing up comedy geek legends. She is one of the reasons why my humor is the way that it is. She's one of the reasons why I talk the way I do, why my inflection is sometimes the way it is. I watched a lot of Victoria Wood growing up, and Mensana and Thingamy Doodah is two middle-aged women going to a spa for the weekend, and the premise, and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's hilarious, and you will never get anything like it again, in exactly the same vein that you'll never get a Red Dwarf again, you'll never get Blackadder again, because the context and the timing of those pieces is so vitally important.
I think in Blackadder you've got like a very different circumstance, because if you go back and watch early Red Dwarf now, because Red Dwarf, they made it so many series that it kind of clung on to relevance. But you go back and watch early Red Dwarf, a lot of the jokes aren't relevant anymore. They sometimes talk about politicians that just have fallen out of like history and things that have happened and so on and so forth. But Blackadder, because they've set it in specifically different time periods, and they don't focus on anything other than what is actually happening around them. So much like a theatre piece, it's just set there and then in what you can see and what's going on. They don't reference anything else really. So there's no outside reference. It's all focused directly on what is happening to Baldric today. Why has he got a turnip on his head? But there's a lot of morality jokes in there. There's a lot of like kind of rich versus poor, and there's a lot of those kind of stories are set inside there, which is why I really like them, because there's the classic poignancy of the very last scene in Blackadder Goes Forth, where they charge out across Spotify. There's so much pathos in what's going on, but it's fucking funny. The Blackadder is the very first time when I was in my early teens I almost pissed myself. Like I couldn't stop laughing.
Which bit?
It was Blackadder the Second. It was just Blackadder the Second, basically. The BBC was showing 3 episodes in one evening, because they used to show them in blocks, and I think it was Bells. And I think Flash Art turned up, and I couldn't stop laughing, and I didn't know how to stop, and everything they did just made it worse. And I was sitting on I was laying on the sofa in front with my parents watching it, and I was laughing so hard, and I go, I need to pee, and I can't get up, and this is awful. I did not piss myself, but it was the very first time I've laughed that hard. Yeah, and it made me you realize how happy I could be, for 5 minutes, outside of life. It was brilliant. It was wonderful.
I have a question.
Can I say my?
Carly and I dominating.
Just do my moment.
Yeah.
My moment, like yours, where I just pissed myself was Mark Heap in Green Wing with the hot coffee enema. That scene is just glorious. Just you're bound to find it on YouTube. Mark Heap, Green Wing, the hot coffee enema.
Oh, you
and
see,
it's just glorious.
I had entirely forgotten that Green Wing existed, and it was wonderful. It was
wasn't it?
so good.
And I hate to say this, but it's going to have to wait for another pod, because we are over budget on time.
No.
So,
But this is so much fun.
Damn you, nostalgia.
yeah. So, gentle listeners, if you've been listening to us talk nonsense today, and I can hear my church bells chiming out of my window, going like, "You're half an hour over the time you would like to be in bed, Stephen." We've really enjoyed this, haven't we? I think we've really enjoyed this.
It's been great.
This is wonderful.
I could do this all day.
It was a request, so we did it. And we've obviously got lots more to talk about. We'll give it a break. We won't come back to it straight away. We've got a whole load of spoop to come up with, because it's Halloween soon and it's October.
Yes.
And you may have noticed that Holly really loves horror films and terror and fear.
Yeah.
Mark, Kit and myself, we get a bit kind of like, squeamish around these things, but we're going to let Holly lead the way on this front.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Cube 2, Hypercube, and Cube 0.
It will be pretty horrible then, because you'll be doing it over my dead body. But we might even dress up. So in the next 4 episodes, we're going to be doing 3 of them being all about horror and terror. And it will probably range through stuff we may have already touched on, but we're going to kind of focus on bits and pieces. At the very end, we'll find ourselves someone who, in our true style of doing this podcast, will be completely unrelated to what we've spoken about. But we'll have them on, and it will be about unicorns, which can be quite terrifying if you're a Terry Pratchett fan.
Or a Rivers of London fan.
I was about to add that in.
But I thought I'd just throw back to Pratchett because we were talking about him. Now you brought us into Rivers of London, so now we're going to have to talk about that for half an hour.
Rivers of London.
That's a whole episode by itself.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. That was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Me too.
But that is us, beautiful people. We are done with our talks. We will be back soon. We hope you have a wonderful time between now and then. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
I've been waiting so long to do this. It's goodbye from me as well.
Power of the quadruple goodbye. Take care of each other. Have an amazing week. Much love. Much love.
Bye.
Oh shit, I've got to press stop, haven't
I? You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Caldery. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Brutnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcaldery.com. Music is by Borislaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at geektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you. And of course, much love. Take care of each other.